Tonight, we scrutinize Uganda's democracy through the eyes of its youngest majority. The figures speak for themselves. 78% of Ugandans are under 30 years, yet 12% youth unemployed, 42% of them are not in education or employment or even any training. And yet a cluster often used during elections to amass support for politicians and also participate in electoral violence. As we enter yet into another phase of our electoral system, which is campaigning, will the issues of the young people be brought to the forefront? Do the young people feel that their views and voices are heard? We have seen the power that these young people have in shaping several democracies across Africa. A prominent example is in neighboring Kenya. The Gen Zs brought government to its knees, demanding for reforms. Back home, young people mobilize against the misuse of government resources through the parliamentary exhibition. We ask, what is the state of our democracy through the youth lens? What kind of Uganda do these young people want? To explore this, we sit down with Aloikin Praise, a young woman who was turned to be out the face of a relentless generation that is not about to give up on the youth demands. She's also the winner of the EU Human Rights Award for her courageous activism, fighting for civil liberties, social justice, and accountability. Praise, thank you so much for joining us for the Hard Questions show today.
Thank you so much, Solomon.
It's really good to have you.
Yeah, I'm kind of nervous. But you know when they say hard questions.
Several people have sat in your seat before, and I think it's going to be a great conversation. Praise.
Yes.
I really admire your courage, I admire your enthusiasm, but perhaps let me start by congratulating you on graduating recently with the Youth for Policy program,
Thank you
which
so
was a
much.
special program organized for young people by the Conrad Adenauer Stiftung. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
it's really good to be mentored, right?
Yeah, and tested because I had never ventured so much into what policy could look like, especially with the way I entered into the civic space arena was frontline activism, mobilizing for protests, hitting the streets. But for me, it was one of those other ways to show society that young people actually have options and opinions. Because most times, what I would like to call them oppressors say is that, you guys are saying you want a change of government, you're saying you want a better government, but what is a better government? What do you think we could do better? Our hands are tied. But working on that policy paper helped me realize that there are actually other options. There are actually
beyond
other
frontline
solutions.
activism.
Yes, beyond frontline activism, but also beyond the current status quo that we have that most times is marketed as the best thing that there could be. You get? Like, oh yeah, we have poor schools, but at least we have schools. You get? Oh yes, we allow you speak, we allow you associate just because you're violent or stuff like that. So you realize that that's not actually true.
Yeah.
So for me, the journey of working on this policy paper was interesting. Personally, I had like back and forths. You take your paper, you're so excited. I think this is it. And they're like, no, it still has gaps. So it was a learning experience.
Listen, I can't agree more with you. You see, this is perhaps, in my view, what young people need. Beyond just activism, there's policy, there's laws, and you're a lawyer. We can shape our democracy both on the front line, but also in terms of shaping at conversations at higher level.
Yeah, I agree. Though where I disagree is that you say like the other thing is not activism too. I feel like it's all activism. You get? Sitting down and saying, let me give policy options for A, B, C, D is also a form of activism. And sometimes we narrow activism to like going to the street and protesting, doing the hardcore things that we do. But I've come to realize that sometimes it's in the small things that seem so harmless, but actually hit home. Because we're working with over, I think, like 10 young people on different human rights policy options. So that can create a ground for even the frontline activism, because this is what you present to the people. You're like, you could be doing A, B, C, D, but you choose to do A, B, C, D. So you're presenting the options. You're not just going with the anger, the passion. You're going with data, with statistics, with information.
Yeah, certainly. Listen, I know I have a number of questions for you, but I wanted to first of all understand what drives you. I mean, I've seen you on the front line protesting. You have been arrested. what drives you?
I think one is exhaustion. Like, this is all I know. This is the system I know. I have been born in this government. I've watched it get worse and over again. And from the little experience that I have, I'm a debater. So I have traveled within the country, outside the continent, just debating. And you come to realize that there is something better. Like, governments can do more. This is what actually a democracy looks like. And you carry a certain passion to transplant what you've seen somewhere else here, because you know it's possible. And it's something most Ugandans lack, because this is all they know. They do not have that privilege of exposure or that chance of exposure to know that things can be better. That's why when you meet a young person of my age, 20 to 26, and you ask them why they support the NRM, they'll tell you peace. We used to have wars, but now we have peace. But they've even never seen those wars. They don't know those wars. So one, it is that exhaustion of seeing other places get better, and yet our country keeps getting worse. But also my own personal experiences. I was born in a humble district of Palisa district in eastern Uganda. And in that district, certain things are so normal. It's so normal for people to imagine that education ends at P7. Once you've graduated primary 7, you've achieved all the education there is no higher dream than that. Very few people that have the privilege to go ahead, even the intelligent students, do not have the money to go beyond that.
But there is universal secondary education.
Well, if we go to universal secondary education, let's look at the per capita grant that goes just to that. It's like 60,000 Ugandan shillings per year for a student, competing with a student studying in SETA, paying around 3 million every term. Just look at how disadvantaged this student in this USE school already is. You're studying chemistry, you've hardly been in a lab. You don't even know what a test tube looks like. You're seeing some of these things for the first time in the examination. So odds are against you. And you see intelligent children settle for less. You see potential never reached. And it's normal. No dreams, no life. That's just their reality. And for me, it even became a greater reality when I got pregnant and I had to give birth. I have a little daughter. She turned 2 in August. And I happened to be home because I wanted to give birth around my mother so that she could take care of me in the whole process. But the best facility that we had there was the government hospital. And I call it best not because it's up to standard, but it's because it's what is there. I gave birth through the normal vaginal delivery. I get this huge tear. And for around 45 minutes, they're trying to find the thread that they used to stitch me. The midwife is asking for a bribe of just 5K to find it, which also comes late. There are like 4 women in this birthing room with me. One almost exhausted and dying. They're trying to call the surgeon to come and work on her. But the surgeon left is still at home. They're saying the one who was on shift went home. And it's so normal. It's so normal. A child is given birth to. It's a stillbirth. And the whole situation is just happening. And I'm like, is this how people live? And a few days after that, because of the delay between me breastfeeding my child, she got certain complications. She was not okay. So in the next 1 week, we're trying to treat her. But you'd reach the place, there is no one to attend to you. I'm so uncomfortable about it. There is a lady crying. Her child is supposed to be on oxygen, but the doctors are fighting about a certain equipment that they have to keep sharing between departments. And I'm like, guys, this is the life of someone. And I wanted to speak up. And my mom kept telling me, keep quiet. If you speak up, they'll not work on your child. Here, you mind about yourself alone. Don't think about the other people's children. And I was like, no, the world can't be like this. But also, I tried to convince myself, like, maybe we are broke. This is the best we can do. This is, we don't have money. Then shortly after that, the exhibition started happening. More specifically, the parliamentary exhibition. And you would see billions of money being wasted, stolen, taken into personal, private accounts and pockets of people. And I realized, no, it's not just about the money. It's greed. It's people intentionally destroying systems to keep people a certain way, to keep them poor, to keep them far away from reasoning for themselves. Because that's how democracies are. They are built on the power of people. And if people do not acknowledge or use this power, then the state becomes authoritarian. They choose, they play with your mind, That's why the nature of our electorate looks the way it looks. They give them 1K and they are running around in yellow shirts. You see an old man of over 70 saying he's going to vote a president because they called him one day in Kololo and he has been given food and he has managed to pack some back home. And he's saying, my whole family, my children must vote like this. They start with such systems. So my experiences, my exhaustion, my desire for a better country, because I have tested and seen what working systems look like, pushes me to do the things that I do.
Yeah. Do you think that as young people, your voices are heard? I mean, the passion that you speak with, the things you talk about, you have the National Youth Forum where we think that all young people can speak up there and these issues can be brought at the discussion table. Do you think young people's voices are heard?
First of all, no one's voices are heard in this country. If it's just a mere conversation or debate or negotiation, like most people say, you can negotiate, you can talk, you guys are just radical. I always say that debate is a privilege for free people. We are not free people. That's why you go hold a placard and say nothing and you're beaten, arrested, disappeared. That's why you put on a red beret and the next day we are looking for you and putting up posters of free this person, free the other person. Because we are not heard. And it's a sad reality. When our voices are not coupled with some level of extremity, people just sit back and fold their hands. There have to be private individuals intentional about having conversations, holding leaders accountable, young people threatening to protest. That's when finally you see institutions pretending like they're doing something about it. There is no voice being heard just by mere debate and conversation, because the people we speak to are callous. Until you threaten their position, they're comfortable. You can do all the shouting and all the talking you want to do. And you speak about the National Youth Council. The National Youth Council does not in any way represent the pains or the issues of young people in this country. And this is just a simple way to see it. If you look at the NYC statute, it's supposed to be a non-partisan body. But if you go check the National Youth Council Twitter handle, you're going to find that their letters are headed with an NRM logo besides their National Youth Council logo. I've had the privilege, not even privilege, I think it's an unfortunate privilege, to have a conversation with the former chairperson of the National Youth Council.
That's Jacob.
Yes, that's Jacob Ayero, who happened to release a letter, I think sometime, that had that kind of header. And I told him, but this is supposed to be a non-partisan body. And he told me, Praise, till you learn to differentiate politics and activism, you'll understand that the ruling party has the say. And this is coming from the head of this institution. That's why you see when young people are talking about corruption, you'll never hear the end.
But do you bring these things to the National Youth Council?
Yeah, where is even the platform? You're going to find young people at the university and ask them, what is the National Youth Council? And they will almost not even understand what it is. We have tried to have conversations, hold debates, invite Ayero himself and other members of the National Youth Council. And it's a conversation at the university, because we've done this at Makerere University in the Makerere Debating Union. And no one seems to understand. And you may think even the people within the National Youth Council understand what the National Youth Council is or appreciate what it does, but they don't. Because I think last year, we held the National Youth Parliament. And by that time, it's when they had reduced the budget that was intended for the National Youth Council. I think it was something like 8 billion, and they brought it really down to like 800 million or something like that. And one of the motions that was tabled was having that budget reinstated to where it was. Guess what? A majority of the young people, not 56, not 40, 60, no. Over 90% of the people in that house voted that no budget should be increased or reinstated, because we don't even know where money is or where money goes. Every now and then, the issues that you find within the National Youth Council are always quarrels over money, who has eaten, who has not eaten, who didn't involve, who didn't do what. And that brings me to the whole issue of voice. What's even the voice of young people? Which platform in this country allows young people to come and congregate and say, this is our voice? Devoid of political parties, devoid of political affiliations. Which opportunity ever allows for that to happen? It's almost non-existent. It's not there. You find young people divided on the lines of political parties. You find them divided along the lines of, economic or social status and stuff like that. And because of this slavery, which I like to call the slavery of bread and butter. Like all you want to do is go to school, get a fair job, get a good salary, have your family, and live happily ever after. And it all comes with, the killing of dreams, that people don't dream beyond a plate of food. They don't dream beyond that.
Do you feel like the lack of what you've called a platform where young people can voice their views has led you to another option?
Yes, still within the confines of non-violence, but it's resistance. It's no longer, okay, let's talk, or I recently shared on my ex account that I was rushing to campus and I got on a boda, and the boda happened to have Museveni's poster. 2 minutes in the ride, I realized that. I told him, you know what, guy, park your boda here. Let me get off. And I told him, I'm getting off this boda because you support the operation that is keeping you even in this state where you are. It's like, no, they give us some money. I just wanted. No, we take it. You understand how it is. I told him, and that is it. You know that it's wrong, but you still do it. I paid him what I felt was the amount due for that distance, and I got onto another border and went. And I feel like it's with such forms of resistance, because I think we tolerate too much. We tolerate too much. We need to reach a certain form of resistance, a form of democratic intolerance. Because I feel in the Constitution itself, it caters for revolutions. It caters for that kind of intolerance. As long as I'm not harming your fundamental human rights. And that can also be debated along the lines of how far then do we go.
Aren't you being an extremist? Because, if you have your issues that you want to present them and let's debate them.
I told you, debate is a privilege of free people. How are you going to tell a woman that has not eaten food, whose family has not had food, who just lost a child in hospital because there were no drugs, to debate? What value is in her debate, first of all? What power lies in her debate? Debate happens in a place where there is almost equal power, but there is a total imbalance of power. And whenever we say debate, it makes it look like the other options of protest are not constitutional, but they are constitutional. They are provided for in the Constitution. Someone going on the street and marching to Parliament is also a form of democratic practice that is enshrined within our Constitution. Whatever looks like debate in this country has always been the government talking back to young people, the government talking over young people. It has never been a conversation. That's why if you look at young people that try to have conversations of change, the most that the government does is co-opt them and sort of give them the benefits of the patronage, of belonging to the side of the oppressors. It has never been an equal conversation. And I don't think anywhere in history that an oppressor and the oppressed can ever have a debate. And that is not being extreme. Calling this a form of extremism is asking someone that has been oppressed to fight a certain way and each other oppressor. Come on. Sometimes you look at these things like statistics. But I want to draw a picture. Look at the people whose family members have been in prison for now close to 5 years. They were arrested in around 2020, 2021. During the previous elections, they're going to the next elections. These were fathers. They had children. These children have never seen their parents. All they know about this government is pain. And you're telling them, go on a table and have a conversation with a man or with people, first of all, do not acknowledge that what they did in the first place was wrong. Conversations are had with people that are willing to reform, not people that are not willing to reform in any way.
Yeah. I don't know. One would argue that we have a problem with polarization in this country. People don't want to listen to each other because of the extremes. There's extreme left and extreme right. And because of that, people like you don't even want to hear anything. There's a level of polarization in this country that has led us to a place that we cannot sit on a table and talk.
I would like to say yes. That's not far from the truth. But I'm here having a conversation with you, and I'm labeled radical. I feel where a conversation is supposed to be is among the oppressed. I do not stand for conversation between the oppressed and the oppressed. I stand for conversation between the oppressed because, one, For us to have our agenda pushed and achieve it, we need to organize, we need to mobilize, irrespective of our differences. That's the kind of conversation I push for. But if you're trying to push for conversation between systems that have failed people and do not even acknowledge it, then I don't push for that kind of conversation. First of all, that kind of conversation is a privilege for people in democracies. We are not in a democracy. We're in an authoritarian state. Debate cannot even be had on parliament. You would think that members of parliament have a bit of privilege, but even during very hot political topics, the army is surrounding the parliament. It's inside the house. It's beating up members of parliament. What about me, Aloikin, a student that is just in the university in her 4th year? My father didn't fight in the Bush War. I cannot claim any kind of power. What kind of debate or conversation am I supposed to have?
In one of the platforms that you were, you cited saying that youth participation in shaping Uganda's democracy is a mere performance and not reality. And yet we have praise, we have national youth, members, like representatives.
Affirmative positions.
Yes. And we don't, like, these issues don't come through. You still describe it as a performance?
Yes, I think it's just another form of tokenism. Like, oh, let's have these young people here to like endorse whatever we do or whatever we say, to add some credibility to the things that we do. And I'll still go back, who are the young people we have in our parliament? We have Nyamtoro, we have the different youth parliament members who still are a pool of NRM, because first of all, I don't know how the system is built in such a way, but there's why you start to ascend up and start to realize that for, I think, economic reasons, I don't know, certain young people, especially those in the opposition, cannot, go beyond that. But the point is, okay, let's look at the young people within the parliament. First of all, I have an issue that young people are still given affirmative positions for a population that has over 70% of its young people below the age of 30. Like, I thought we're the majority, why our position still affirmative? You get? So, beyond that, these young people never, ever speak on the issues of young people. Even when they call for a certain form of assertion, it's never existent. It's always calm. It's always in the photo moments. It's more of like a political careerist kind of thing. How do I climb up the ladder? That's why you see most of the young people within this system, they go where it sells hot. Oh, okay, it was first the DP. Yeah, we belong in the DP, we belong in the DP. The DP wave went away. They came to Noop, the Noop wave. Now they've realized, okay, the Noop wave is not, like, there's a place where this can't work, especially within the rural areas, because most of those people, because of the systematic, injustices or issues, they still are held back in the, they took us away from the peace. This government is doing its best. We are broke, so this is the best they can give us. It's never the government's issue. So I realized they are what works. Even Palisa, where I come from, despite all those injustices, they still believe in the NRM. They still believe in voting back the members of parliament that belong to the NRM, despite them realizing that for the past 5 years, a person came in, promised ABC, didn't even deliver. First of all, the promises they made do not align with what MPs are supposed to do in the first place and stuff like that. So I realized that these young people that are within the system, within parliament, holding these affirmative positions, never speak to the issues of young people. Last year was such a fundamental time in the politics of this country, especially young people rising up to demand for accountability. That was the parliamentary exhibition, the march to parliament, and everything that surrounded it. How many young people that hold those positions did you see stand up in solidarity with those young people? How many did you see speak up? But how many of those young people do you see always putting out birthday posters for every top dog within the government? If you go look at most of these young people's platforms, that's what they do. Post happy birthday wishes to the president, organize prayers during COVID-19 to go and pray for the president so he doesn't die of COVID-19. Parties, there is now as mobilization, I don't know, foot soldiers or something of the sort. They need young people in Kololo, come to the university, tell young people you're going to give them free transport, free food, and a little money. Someone has been hungry in Lumumba. Of course, they will enter that bus and go to Kololo with you. but where it hurts the most, where voices are needed the most. Just recently, the BBC released a documentary on how we have young Ugandans in Dubai,
Trafficked.
yes, being trafficked. How many young people spoke about, because that's an unemployment issue. It's over 30% of Ugandans live below the poverty line. But how many young people in positions of power in the parliament spoke about that issue?
Are you considering coming to have those views in the house?
Not really.
I
Because
mean, if the people that you're sending as youth representatives to the house do not articulate your core values, it provides an opportunity for you to stand for elective politics or maybe for the affirmative action, and you are in the house.
and now that's what I think the misconception is. The misconception is that every good person who stands for something good in this country must join some political position.
No, but you see, when your views are not heard, the people who you say are supposed to air out the views of the young
Yes.
people in the house are not saying these views, present an opportunity for people who we think can air out those views to go and represent those views in the house. Because if you don't, the same people will be brought back.
Well,
And we will
We-
keep complaining.
we have, okay, this is my analogy of what a good democracy should look like. More focus should be put on teaching the people outside these places of power to hold the people, whoever is in power, accountable. You get? First of all, in this current system in which we are in, even though we've had some few MPs that tried to, be vocal about issues, most especially those in the opposition, but they are outnumbered. They are few in number. If bills have to be passed, they will pass, even though they are autocratic, because they are outnumbered. That's why it's more important for people to be taught how to hold leaders accountable than to try and push leaders into places of power. Because if one leader, let's say Semuji is ever on the floor of parliament, speaking truth to power, but no one is backing him up. No one is ready to say, okay, he has said ABCD, this is wrong, let's back that up with more action, with accountability. Recently, when that IFRIS thing was passed, and people were like, no, this is going to be wrong, they closed shop, and a few days later, things were running. You think members on the floor of parliament had not talked about it? People had not been disgruntled about it. They had been disgruntled about it. But it's always the action of it. That's why when our constitution says power belongs to people, we never put so much thought to how much that statement is grave. Because when it comes to social contracts, the truth is, power always stems from the people before it goes to whoever holds it. That's why even in places where people had guns, where you would not think that people would deliver themselves from that form of oppression, colonialism, name it, people still prevailed. They prevailed over guns. They prevailed over money. They prevailed over all those things. And that is where we are supposed to go back. Because you will keep pushing it. Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. You think well, you think pro-good things, pro-democracy, get into a position of power. But praise today can preach the best thing ever, water, perfect, and enter that parliament and start drinking wine. And what will you do about it? If people cannot hold praise accountable, then the system will still remain the way it is. There were young people we knew. There were people we knew, and we thought these were our people. The president himself, he's a hero. In 1986, he was a beacon of hope, fundamental change. That's why civic education and awareness, it sounds such an NGO term and fancy, but it's the solution for this country, for people to take back their power. That's the only most important, not even only, it's the most important. There are many, but it's the most important check and balance.
Wow.
Because the parliament can fail, the judiciary can fail, the executive can fail. But the people who experience these injustices should be empowered to the level where, whether the cost is their life, they can defend those freedoms.
And speaking about the people who are going into campaigns where
Yes.
politicians are going to the people
Yeah.
to ask for the ballot for
Yeah.
them to come to the house and in different positions of leadership. Which kind of Uganda are you looking for as young people?
Okay, so before I claim to speak for all young people, I don't know if this is a people young people, but from my experience, going out, speaking to people, mobilizing, I think one, what young people want is working systems. Let the system work. Let me know that I'll go to school. The school will be able to give me a fighting chance because I'll find teachers there, I'll find resources there. Go through it. Let me know that, yes, I will go and find a job. And maybe not a job per se, because they say we don't create jobs. We think in the way of I want to get out of university and find a job. But okay, let me say I want to go and be an innovator, an entrepreneur. Let the environment be conducive for me to start a business, to start an idea. Let it favor that. Is it our government thinking more tech? Let our government think more tech. Is it our government investing more money in, the education sector so that it gives everyone a fighting chance? Instead of piling up salaries for members of parliament, inject that money into the education sector. Why should a student go to school on a hungry stomach? And you expect that student to pass through. Why are girls missing school just because they don't have access to sanitary towels? But when a certain bill has to be passed in parliament, the president can dish out 100 million to every MP. So one, working systems. And that means in those working systems, corruption is non-existent. In those working systems, meritocracy goes over every other form of nepotism, or call it whatever my father fought in the bush. That's one. And out of those working systems comes freedom to express ourselves, to speak, to hold leaders accountable. I need the freedom to associate with whichever political party I feel best represented with, whether it's the new opposition parties or NRM or FDC or PFF. First, give me that, those fundamental freedoms. But also the respect of the Constitution. If you ask around this continent, they say we have one of the most perfect constitutions, of course, until some amendments happened over the years. But if we go back to our 1995 Constitution, except for a few, of course, considerations for things like gender and stuff like that, but holistically, it was a good constitution. Talk of term limits, talk of age limits. It's a very important thing, but also we need transition. Transition is a very important question. A government that has failed to hold its affairs for the past 40 years cannot ask us for extra years to correct anything, especially if they do not even acknowledge that they've mismanaged this country in the past 40 years of their existence.
Well,
So transition is also a very
important
country.
they're going back to the people to ask for a ballot, and the power belongs to the people, so the people will choose who they want to keep in power.
Well, we could say that at the face of it, because, okay, this is a democracy. And this is actually, this is a democratic action. Elections is democratic. But if you investigate the nature of electorate in this country, you realize this is not a democratic practice anyway, at the end of the day. In a place where there is no civic education, there is no voter education that is meaningful, in a place where the opposition is going to be not even allowed to carry out its campaign trail the way that it should, where having conversations about the issues in this country gets you arrested and put in, how are people going to even know what the right choice is if they are voting off plates of pilau at Kololo? How are they going to know what the right thing is? If they are voting off wars that happened even before they were born, and all they know is, oh, we have peace. They don't even know what peace is. They don't even understand what peace is. How is that going back to the people to ask them for power? That's assuming that the people even know they have the power or are using their power in the right way, which they are not. These are powerless people. They've been systematically engineered to think.
But that's devaluing the people of Uganda and their vote, because they go and line up in queues to select their leaders. And that's what the Constitution says, that people will choose who their leaders, who the people they want to lead them. And we go to the polls, they choose people in opposition, they choose people in government. And that's the electoral process. That's what defines our democracy. So devaluing people's votes as just garbage.
No. It's not a devaluation of people's votes. It's the reality. It's the reality of what is happening. There is a certain theory. I don't know if it's Pavlov's theory. You can engineer a person to think a certain way, act a certain way. So many psychological theories can justify what I'm saying. You've heard of Stockholm Syndrome, where you just have a certain obsession over the person that is oppressing you, over your abuser, because you do not have the privilege, you've not had the chance to even be given another option. the whole idea of elections is built on the assumption that people have choices, they're well educated on which choice is best for them, and then they go out to choose. But people are not even educated about the choice they're supposed to make. You can't give me bread and bread and bread and bread, and then tell me choose between bread and bread and bread and bread. Definitely I would choose bread. So that's not a democracy. And let's even understand that democracy goes beyond election. Like, you cannot pick one democratic practice and put it in an authoritarian system and then say, here is a democracy. People's votes, our votes don't matter. Our voices don't matter. The Electoral Commission is already partisan. We have seen just in nominations how they were playing Manyanga up and down. People's votes matter, but they matter in a democratic country. Choice, the idea of choice, has more value when the person making this choice is informed. That's why informed choice is more important than just choice. But no one is giving these people this information. No one is even giving them the chance to interact with better systems, to choose between those systems. If a young girl born in Palisa, all she knows is what she knows, first of all, opposition is not allowed to penetrate to those areas, to speak these things. Civil society is not allowed to penetrate and have political conversations within those areas. So it's a green land. She has grown up, she knows the NRM because her member of parliament is NRM. Whatever, as they give you this money for PDM, they, Museveni has given us this. Everything is tied back to Museveni. She doesn't know that as they give her 1 million to go become rich, an MP is pocketing 100 million. She does not know that as she goes to school and says, oh, we have education, our children nowadays go to school, they're not, she doesn't know that her child is studying on 60,000 Ugandan shillings for a whole year, as this minister is flying out their child to go and study in some foreign university in the UK on her tax. So someone who doesn't know, how can they make a choice? I think there should just be no choice and informed choice, because there's a lot of hiding. This is a democratic place. People's votes matter. Let's go to the people. The people have chosen. Yes, the people have chosen, but you didn't give them another option to choose from.
As we go into elections, what's the place of young people in this electoral process?
I think elections have become a safety valve for most young people, for this country, that we are waiting for the next cycle of 5 years to sort of redeem our country. But elections are never going to help us redeem this country.
What is going to help us?
Collective civic action, engineered to the transition question in this country. I don't know what it could be. I'm not going to sit here and claim to have that solution, but I have an idea of what that solution could look like. People can mobilize themselves on issue-based coalitions, on the things that push them. We have seen color revolutions, for example, happen all over. We have to think outside the box of elections. And it's not because I don't believe in democracy, no. But I don't think that this system can hold a democratic, even practice or democratic idea or ideology. It can't do that. It's like finding spoiled milk and you keep trying to add fresh milk, hoping that the fresh milk makes the spoiled milk good milk. But no, the spoiled milk will make the good milk spoiled.
So what defines democracy to you, Praise?
Power belonging to the people. Power belonging to the people. Where governments lead according to the informed will and choice of the people. I wouldn't have an issue if I knew this electorate was informed and they chose Museveni to lead again. But also I wouldn't really, if we go in that comment, it would be so wide, but it wouldn't be an issue. But where all powers, freedoms have been stripped of people, because when we talk of power, we talk of freedoms. And you may ask me, who makes these human rights? These are inalienable rights. These are freedoms. Everyone is supposed to have these freedoms by virtue of being a human being. And that's why we have the conversation on human rights. That's what a democracy looks. Actually, a democracy is summarizing power belonging to people, because it's that power trickling down to a specific few people that represent the intentions of these people, and it's a back and forth of accountability. Okay, you're representing us. You say you're going to do ABCD, but have you done ABCD? No, you've not done ABCD. Okay, come out. Let's take someone else in who will do that. Okay, now let's have conversations on you can't rule us forever. That is no longer It's not feasible. It's not in the best of our interests. This is in the best of our interests. That's what a democracy is. It's beyond, they summarize it in that government for the people, by the people, with the people, whatever, people. But it's supposed to be a government centered around people, not around few individuals, around the people. And for me, I don't think we shall ever reach or mature into any form of democracy if Ugandans are not empowered, if Ugandans don't even understand that they have this power, if Ugandans are not civically aware, if they're not opened up to opportunities, opened up to the possibilities of greater.
What does the future for Uganda through your lens look like?
I am so optimistic about the future of this country, extremely optimistic. And it's because despite how constantly the system has tried to hold people down, they still surface, they try, they come up, they speak. And for so long, we had left the work of change in this country to like civil society, opposition or political parties, like, okay, this political party, that, civil society, this, like if civil society doesn't do it, it doesn't do it. It's small, it's not yet up there, but there are more young people, not because of political party or because they have access to some resources somewhere from a civil society organization, rising up, and they genuinely want a better country. Yes, they could still have issues. They're not mobilizing well. They are fighting amongst themselves. We are confused. But we are starting something. And for me, that gives me hope that we are even having these conversations. We are questioning these ideologies, questioning political parties, questioning civil society organizations, questioning whatever system that there is. I'm optimistic. I must say I'm optimistic.
Okay, optimism.
Yes.
What would be, my last question, what would be your message to young people out there as we go into elections, as we continue to push for democracy? What would be your final call to young people out there?
What I can tell young people is this. It's hard to build the Uganda that we want, but it's harder to imagine that this country will even get better if we don't try. So we better keep trying and trying and trying, because there is no man who has done something intentionally with the need to grow in that specific area, not become an expert in what they do or not achieved what they want to achieve. It may be luck, it may be blessing, it may be the right timing, it may be something that will just move in our favor, but it must find us prepared. We must know more about our constitution. We must know more about the Uganda that we want. We just shouldn't be fighting. We want change, we want a new government. What do you want in that new government? What do you want in that transition government? But most importantly, in every initiative we do, it must be to return power back to the people. Because Chagulanyi may come in power tomorrow and turn. Aloikin, who is preaching every day human rights, democracy, may get into power and turn. But if the people have their power, they can always correct that. They can always correct that. For so long, we have allowed our country to get into a place where we felt a few people should rule this country because we could now club longer, take beer, walk around at night, and we called that peace. But that power corrupted them because absolute power corrupts. So this power is safer in our many hands as young people.
As we wrap up, you see, power in itself is a construct of different things.
Yes.
For example, power can be, in the three arms of government: the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature. When young people are not on those tables where power is negotiated, it becomes difficult to even go back to what you're saying, that power belongs to the people. Because if the constitution is amended, it's there. And if it's not challenged, it will continue being that. And that will shape our democracy. So I'm just saying, praise, that young people have to be at the center of power, to negotiate power, and in a way be able to get what they want. The Uganda they want. When you say you want to give people their power to make these decisions. That takes a radical shift in our policies, in our legislation, in the way our constitution is shaping, like, because anyway, when people think that they have power to go and demonstrate and all this, and yet people at the center of power negotiating laws that go against that demonstration, then people will demonstrate, they are arrested, and they're prosecuted against a constitution or laws that have been shaped by those people who are in power to keep themselves in power. So just to simply put it, in my view, and again, I'm just a host, I mean, I don't even know why I'm saying these things, but in my view, young people have to be at the center where power is negotiated.
Okay, I totally respect your view, but I'm going to show you an analogy. We used to say we need more women in power. Like we need women in power so they can push for pro-women agendas. But you see, that position, someone going to office and holding that particular position, doesn't necessarily mean that they will stand for the interests of that particular group of people, if that particular group of people do not hold that particular person accountable. That's why you'll say, oh, we have young people. Yeah, we have these affirmative positions. But where are they on young people issues? Oh, we have women. But where are these women on women issues? Recently, we all had that story of the journalist who asked the president about the issue of hospitals in Mukono. And Nabanja went and showed the prime minister, she's a woman, and she was like, this is a show that doctors are working, that's why women are on the floor. That was disrespectful of the journalist. This is a woman speaking on a women-related issue. So when I say taking back parts of people, I'm not saying, oh, let people run here where they're doing whatever they want to do. No. In a democracy, there is a constitution that spells out the do's and don'ts. But what I'm trying to say is let people understand that whoever is in the place of power, that political position, derives it from them. That your member of parliament, who is coming to your place, claiming to ask you for a vote, never even stays in that district. They spend most of their time in Kampala. There are other ways beyond waiting for another 5 years to hold them accountable. Constitutional ways of holding people accountable in this country. And you hate demonstrations so much, but they are part of it. They are part of what is stipulated. Peaceful protest is part of it. Because court is part of it, but also if you go to court and court is not working, you should be able to hold the judiciary also accountable as people. And that's what happened recently in the Kabaziguruka judgment, a judgment that had sat in that court for close to 4 years until people started making noise. And this is just people making noise about it on X. This and this, people, civilians in the military. That's also power, the ability to speak. And finally, here is a judgment and stuff like that. If you listened to Awinyi Dolo's judgment, the first 5 minutes were saying, you online activists who are always calling us up, because it's what moved them to make that decision. It's people speaking. That's the point I'm talking about. It's not everyone feeling like, no, let's keep the institutions, let's keep the constitution, but let the power always be centered around that.
Praise Aloikin. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you for hosting me.
I have been speaking to, Praise. You just heard it from her. Praise Aloikin is the young person who wants a better Uganda for her, leading on the front line of activism and civic engagement for young people to demand for a better Uganda. I'm Solomon Serwanja. Thanks for watching. This is The Hard Questions.